this episode, we focus on a topic that sounds like scheduling, but in governance it is really about credibility, whether an organization can make commitments and then actually keep them. Beginners often assume that if leadership approves a set of initiatives, the organization will simply execute them. But delivery depends on capacity, and capacity is always limited. Capacity planning is the disciplined effort to match what the organization wants to do with what it can realistically do, given people, skills, time, dependencies, and operational obligations. When capacity planning is weak, organizations overcommit, teams get overloaded, quality drops, and delays become normal, which slowly destroys trust in both governance and leadership. When capacity planning is strong, the organization makes fewer promises but keeps them more consistently, and it can respond to changes without collapsing into chaos. The goal here is learning how to plan resource capacity so demand, constraints, and delivery stay aligned, using language leaders understand and practices that reduce surprise rather than creating paperwork. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at Cyber.Author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Capacity is not the same as headcount, and this is one of the first misunderstandings beginners need to correct. Headcount is how many people you have, but capacity is how much work those people can actually deliver during a period of time, given everything else they must do. A team of 10 people might have low capacity if they are constantly handling urgent incidents, supporting legacy systems, or dealing with frequent rework. Another team of 5 people might have higher effective capacity if their environments are stable, their work is well prioritized, and their skills match the demand. Capacity is also shaped by skill mix, because having many people does not help if the skills needed for critical tasks are missing. Capacity planning therefore starts by understanding what types of work exist and what skills and roles are required, not just counting bodies. Beginners can think of this like a kitchen that has many staff, but only one person who can cook certain dishes. The kitchen's capacity for those dishes is constrained by that single skill. In governance terms, if the organization does not understand skill constraints, it will keep approving work that cannot be delivered. Demand is the set of requested and expected work that competes for capacity, and demand is often larger than people realize. Demand includes visible projects and initiatives, but it also includes operational work like maintaining services, responding to incidents, handling compliance obligations, supporting users, and updating systems. Many organizations make capacity mistakes because they plan only for projects and forget that operations is a constant consumer of time and attention. When operational demand is ignored, project timelines become unrealistic and teams are forced to choose between keeping the lights on and delivering new value. This choice often leads to burnout and to risky shortcuts, which increases incidents and creates a vicious cycle. Capacity planning makes demand explicit so leaders can see the true workload and make informed trade-offs. Beginners sometimes assume operational work is separate from strategy, but operational stability is usually a prerequisite for strategic delivery. Governance must therefore treat operational demand as part of the portfolio, not as invisible background noise. Constraints are the limits that shape how demand can be met, and they are not all financial. Constraints include limited skills, limited tools, limited environments, limited vendor support, regulatory deadlines, and dependency chains where one team cannot proceed until another finishes foundational work. Constraints also include organizational change capacity, meaning how much change people can absorb without productivity collapsing. Beginners often think constraints are excuses, but in governance they are the facts that determine what is realistic. A plan that ignores constraints is not ambitious. It is misleading because it sets expectations that cannot be met. Capacity planning requires identifying constraints early and communicating them clearly, because constraints shape sequencing and scope. For example, if a critical platform team is already at capacity supporting stability, adding major transformation work may not be feasible without reducing other demand or adding resources. If a vendor has long lead times, speed cannot be assumed even if funding is available. When constraints are mapped, governance can decide whether to reduce demand, increase capacity, or change approach. Alignment between demand, constraints, and delivery means the organization's commitments are grounded in reality, and that reality is shared rather than hidden. One of the biggest governance failures is approving a portfolio that looks good on paper but requires every team to operate at perfect efficiency with zero interruptions. Real delivery includes interruptions, learning, coordination, and unexpected issues, so capacity planning must include buffers and risk awareness. Beginners may be tempted to see buffers as inefficiency, but buffers are what prevent small problems from turning into schedule collapse. If capacity is planned at 100% utilization, there is no room for incident response, troubleshooting, or coordination, and the plan will break quickly. A realistic capacity plan acknowledges uncertainty and builds space for it, which improves reliability of delivery. This is similar to how a student schedules study time with room for unexpected obligations rather than planning every minute perfectly. In enterprise governance, reliability matters more than optimism because broken promises erode trust. To plan capacity effectively, the organization needs a way to translate demand into effort in a consistent manner, even if estimates are imperfect. This does not require perfect forecasting. It requires enough structure that different initiatives can be compared and sequenced. Effort includes not only the work to build or implement something, but also the work to test, secure, integrate, document, and support it afterward. Beginners often miss the hidden work, especially integration and operational support, because they focus on the visible deliverable. Capacity planning should therefore include a view of life cycle effort, meaning the initiative consumes capacity not just during development, but during rollout and stabilization. This is one reason organizations that launch many initiatives at once often become unstable, because they overload the stabilization phase across multiple efforts. A mature capacity plan considers when work peaks, such as during migrations or cutovers, and avoids stacking too many peaks together. It also considers that some work is sequential rather than parallel, because certain dependencies must be satisfied first. When effort is estimated consistently, governance can make trade-offs with less argument and more clarity. Another key concept is that capacity is not uniform across the organization, because different teams have different constraints and different types of demand. Capacity planning needs to respect bottlenecks, meaning the teams or roles that limit throughput, because their work is required for many initiatives. Common bottlenecks include security review teams, architecture teams, platform teams, and specialized engineers with rare skills. Beginners might assume that if most teams are available, the organization is fine, but a single bottleneck can delay many initiatives. Good governance identifies these bottlenecks early and plans around them, either by reducing demand for bottleneck services, improving efficiency, adding capacity, or changing sequencing. Bottlenecks also create risk, because overloading a bottleneck team can cause rushed reviews and increased errors, which leads to incidents. Capacity planning is therefore a risk management activity, not just a scheduling exercise. When bottlenecks are visible, leaders can make intentional choices rather than discovering delays after commitments are announced. Visibility is what turns a bottleneck from a surprise into a manageable constraint. Capacity planning also depends on defining priorities clearly, because capacity is not only about what is possible, but about what should be done first. When priorities are unclear, teams may work on what is loudest or what is easiest, and critical work can drift. A governance-aligned capacity plan links capacity allocation to enterprise priorities, ensuring that the most important initiatives receive focus and that lower priority work is delayed or reduced. This is where demand management comes in, because controlling demand is often easier than trying to stretch capacity beyond safe limits. Beginners sometimes assume that more work can always be squeezed in by working harder, but sustained overload leads to burnout, turnover, and quality problems that reduce capacity further. Demand management might mean postponing less critical initiatives, narrowing scope, or combining similar efforts to reduce duplication. It can also mean making trade-offs explicit, such as choosing reliability improvements over new features when risk is high. When demand is managed intentionally, capacity planning becomes a tool for focus rather than a record of frustration. Another aspect beginners should understand is that capacity is affected by the stability of the environment and the maturity of delivery practices. Organizations with frequent incidents and fragile systems spend a significant portion of capacity on firefighting, leaving less capacity for planned work. Improving stability can therefore increase effective capacity, even if headcount does not change. This means capacity planning is not only about measuring, it is about improving the system so capacity grows over time. Governance can support this by prioritizing foundational work that reduces rework and incidents, such as improving change management, enhancing observability, and addressing chronic reliability issues. These investments may not look like new business features, but they can unlock capacity by reducing unplanned demand. Beginners can think of this like repairing a leaky roof. If you do not fix the leak, you spend time cleaning up water forever, and that time crowds out everything else. Capacity planning makes these hidden drains visible and turns them into strategic improvement opportunities. Over time, the organization becomes less reactive and more capable of delivering commitments. It is also important to plan capacity at the right level of detail, because too much detail can create false precision and too little detail can create blind spots. Governance often benefits from a portfolio-level capacity view that shows major allocations, major constraints, and major risks, without pretending to predict every task. This view should be updated regularly, because capacity and demand change as initiatives progress and as new issues arise. Regular updates support alignment because leaders can adjust priorities before overload becomes a crisis. Beginners sometimes think plans are fixed, but in governance, plans must be stable enough to guide work while still being revisited with new information. Capacity planning is part of that discipline, creating structured opportunities to rebalance demand and capacity. When updates are routine, changes feel like responsible management rather than sudden chaos. This also improves communication because stakeholders know when decisions will be revisited and what information will be considered. Communication is a crucial part of capacity planning because leaders need to understand why certain commitments are possible and others are not. If capacity is communicated as vague statements like "we are busy," it feels like avoidance. If capacity is communicated in terms of constrained capabilities, bottlenecks, and trade-offs, it becomes a leadership decision rather than a team complaint. For example, governance can explain that a platform team is constrained due to operational risk and that adding a major initiative would require either delaying other work or accepting higher outage risk. That framing helps leaders choose between speed and stability consciously. Beginners should understand that capacity planning is not about defending teams. It is about protecting enterprise outcomes by preventing predictable failure. When leaders can see the relationship between capacity and risk, they are more likely to support realistic plans. This also supports accountability, because when commitments are made based on capacity, performance can be measured fairly. Capacity transparency builds trust because it reduces the gap between promises and reality. As we close, planning resource capacity so demand, constraints, and delivery stay aligned is one of the most practical ways governance protects the enterprise from chronic overcommitment and unreliable execution. Capacity is more than headcount because it is shaped by skills, stability, operational obligations, and bottlenecks. Demand is more than projects because operations and compliance consume real time and attention. Constraints are not excuses, but the factors that determine sequencing, feasibility, and risk, and ignoring them creates plans that fail predictably. When capacity planning is realistic, it supports prioritization, improves reliability, and reduces burnout by ensuring teams are not asked to do the impossible. For brand new learners, the key takeaway is that governance earns credibility when it helps the organization make fewer, clearer commitments and then actually deliver them. When demand and capacity are aligned, delivery becomes steadier, risk becomes more manageable, and strategic goals become achievable instead of aspirational. That is why capacity planning is not administrative work, but a core discipline for governing resources responsibly.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.